Chapter 23. Choosing the Target. Reyes entered the great hall shortly before dusk. There were already a few people in the hall before him. Standing together over in one of the corners were Reyes' brother Greyforth and his uncle Manipul, the current Duke of Ganespa, and they were busy chatting. Sir Grant was also present. He was alone, standing near the centre of the room admiring the canvas. Also there, the King and Queen stood just inside the entrance to the room, greeting everyone who entered. That was it, just 5 people in Reyes. There was not a servant to be seen anywhere. This was clearly intended as a closed meeting. "Reyes," the King greeted, offering his hand. "I'm glad you could make it." "Reyes," Jenny greeted happily. "My liege," Reyes answered the King. He felt the urge to bow, but he resisted it. Instead, he took the King's proffered hand and clasped it firmly in friendship, and then released it. Then he turned his head to better address the Queen. "My sister," he hesitated, and his body shivered with the dread of what he had just said. I mean, it's fine," Jenny said with a smile. "I am your sister. It's good to see you. How's married life suiting you?" "Please, dear," the King chided. "This isn't a social gathering." "I think married life suits me," Reyes told her, "though I think it confuses the other harpies. Some of them have a hard time accepting that I am truly married. Even my own wife has a problem with the idea that I am only for her now." "She still wants you to sleep around?" Jenny asked, a quizzical look in her eye. Reyes extended both his arms in a pose of confusion. "She does." "She's a harpy," Jenny told him. "She's probably confused as to why you won't." "You stick to your morals," the King suggested. "She might not think she'd mind, but if you actually took advantage of the situation, things could turn sour very quickly. She might not scold you for it, but you might also find that your relationship with her isn't what it once was." "I would never betray her," Reyes insisted, feeling just a little scandalised at the suggestion. "Good," the King intoned. "Anyway, welcome to the War Council. Feel free to help yourself to refreshments. We will begin when the last of our number has arrived." "Who are we waiting for?" Reyes asked. "Mangloss," Jenny told him. "We need his guidance," the King said. "And his magic." Reyes nodded. "And?" "That's it," Jenny said. "Just Mangloss. Ideally Sir Richmond would have been here too, but he's stuck in... Well, he's somewhere in the Elven Lands. I'm not really sure where. We haven't heard from him for weeks." "I hope he's all right," Reyes commented. "Me too," Jenny agreed. "Anyway," Reyes said, getting back to the subject, "this is it." He took another look around. "Just the 7 of us." "This is it," the King confirmed. "No one else is of high enough rank to make such a decision as the one we face today." "And what decision is that?" Reyes asked. "Wait until Mangloss is here," Jenny suggested. "Then we'll tell everyone at once." Reyes bowed his head towards the 2 royals and then turned and walked slowly over to the refreshment table. The main problem with having such excellent hearing was that sometimes you could overhear things you'd rather not know about. The conversation between Manipul and Greyforth, for example. "Do you smell something?" It was Manipul who was speaking. He was looking about the hall and his eyes seemed to settle for a moment on Reyes. "Oh look, the harpies arrived." "That's Reyes." "My brother Reyes?" Greyforth defended. It felt strange to Reyes that Greyforth would come to his defence like that. "And quite frankly, you smell a little ripe yourself." "Oh, I didn't mean it in a nasty way," Manipur explained, backtracking a little. "But don't you think that harpies do have a strange smell about them? It's not altogether pleasant, but I've smelled worse." "I can't say I've ever noticed it, no," Greyforth stated firmly. "Well, you are his brother," Manipur suggested. He wrinkled his nose a little. "Maybe you got used to the smell." Reyes reached what had to be the refreshment table. It was actually a pair of long wooden tables that had been placed together and then covered with a cloth. There was enough food and wine adorning the surface to feed a gathering 4 times this number. Since there were no servants in the hall, Reyes assumed he would have to serve himself. Reyes grabbed a bottle of wine and poured himself a glass. He then pulled off one of the drumsticks from the plate containing the chicken. The meat was cold, but better cold meat than nothing. "I don't think I fancy the chicken anymore," Reyes could hear Manipul saying. "Oh?" Greyforth sounded a little irritated, put it mildly. "I'm sorry," Manipul confessed. "I know he's your brother, but I just can't bring myself to eat anything that a harpy has touched." "Perhaps you should keep such comments to yourself," Greyforth suggested. Manipul almost immediately replied with, "You realise he holds a knighthood. The King has made that harpy a knight." "I know," Greyforth replied. "I'm proud of him. I think it's well deserved." Then he pointedly added, "Don't you?" "He's 8, Manipur expounded. "If he was human, he would have had to wait until he reached the age of 18 before he would have been given a knighthood. What's more, he's a harpy. When did we start giving knighthoods to non-humans? We'll be giving them to women next." That might not be a bad idea, Greyforth commented. I know of at least 2 who would make excellent knights. It sounded to Reyes as if his brother was getting a little tired of Manipul's ravings. Reyes would have to agree. He had considered going over and joining his brother, but he wasn't sure he wanted to engage Duke Ganespa in conversation. Reyes sipped his wine carefully. The glass had been designed to cater to human lips, and Reyes found it a little awkward to drink from, without spilling any. As he drank, Reyes considered his options. Well, he could stay here on his own by the refreshment table and wait for the meeting to start. He could return to the king and his sister and make some more small talk. Or he could go and join Sir Grant in front of the canvas and maybe keep the old trainer company for a short while. Sir Grant was just standing in front of the no longer blank canvas, watching it as though he were mesmerised. To Reyes, the canvas was awash with colour. The blue glow of magic was predominant, but under that glow there seemed to be an echo of the entire encampment. It looked weird, as if all the colours were trying to mingle together, while he was still able to make out certain features. "Isn't it beautiful?" Sir Grant commented. He didn't bother to turn to see who he was addressing. "You can see it," Reyes commented, surprised. He had thought the only reason he could see it was because he had some skill with magic. The effect, I mean. "Oh yes," Sir Grant replied. He looked at Reyes for a moment and then back at the canvas. "It'll be ready soon." "That's what this meeting is about," Reyes suggested. "At a guess." Sir Grant nodded. "Careful you don't get too close. If the painting is disturbed, the entire spell will be ruined." "Makes you wonder why the king would risk holding such a meeting in here," Reyes commented, his own eyes fixed on the myriad of colours coming from the canvas. "Only place big enough," Sir Grant replied. He looked at Reyes. "I haven't seen much of you since the day you got married." "You've been busy training peasants," Reyes replied. "Anita tells me you've been helping, occasionally. She hasn't seen much of you since little, Lagnoff," Reyes offered. Sir Grant nodded. "Lagnoff was born, though I guess that's only to be expected. So, how is married life treating you? How'd you like being a father? It's not all that long since you were Lagnoff's age yourself." Reyes almost laughed. It was the second time since he had entered the hall that someone had asked him that question. It was as if humans collectively had a one-track mind. Reyes got no further. Mangloss had finally arrived and the king's voice filled the hall announcing, "Right, now everyone is here. We can get started. I believe everyone knows everyone else." Manipul raised his hand. "The Harpy and I haven't been introduced properly." The king sighed. "This is Reyes the Moth. You were at his wedding, Reyes. This is your uncle Manipul, Duke of Ganespa." "Pleased to meet you," Reyes said across the room. He intended to be civil, even if his uncle didn't. "Likewise," Manipul replied, his voice a little cold. "Right," the king said. "Let's get down to business. Mangloss tells me that in about 2 days' time the painting will be ready." "Actually, it's ready now," Mangloss stated. "I can cast the final spell any time you wish." "So why wait?" Manipul asked. "The weather," Mangloss explained simply. "Judging by past experience, there will be a break in the weather in about 2 days. The sky will be clear for a short while, hopefully giving Reyes and his harpies plenty of time to transport us as far away from here as he can, before things start to turn sour again." "So we're trusting our lives to these harpies," Manipul said uncertainly. He glanced over at Reyes. "No offence, I'm sure you are very trustworthy. But I don't know about your girls." Reyes returned a friendly smile to indicate that he hadn't taken offence. "You are," the king ordered clearly. "We all are. That much has already been decided. What we are here to decide is where Reyes will be taking us." "I thought we'd agreed on Arliss," Reyes pointed out. "Arliss would be a good target, admittedly," the king voiced. "The elves have concentrated a lot of their forces on that little island. They clearly have some reason for being there that goes a long way beyond their desire to subjugate our country. We may even find the true reason for the invasion lies somewhere on that island." "You don't think that it's simply retaliation for our attack on Goldspawn, then?" Greyforth asked. "That was the excuse that spurred the Elven Emperor to action," Jenny explained, stepping forward. "It was the catalyst that stirred the whole thing into motion. But no, the key to this invasion is somewhere on the main island of Arliss. So, Arliss is the obvious target, except," the king addressed the mage, "Mangloss?" Mangloss coughed, and then he stepped forward almost to the centre of the room. "The city of Arliss and part of its immediate surroundings have been shrouded by an anti-scry shield. It's unclear exactly how strong a force we would have to face if we went there. At a rough estimate, though, judging by the number of ships I can divine parts around the island as well as the soldiers that aren't covered by the shield, I would say there is somewhere in the region of 100,000 elven soldiers and their allies on the island. Probably more. I have counted no less than 70 harpy villages sitting up home on the volcano. There might easily be more tucked under the shroud. Oh, and one more thing. The weather in Arliss is fine. The snows that have so harried us here in the north of the country are nowhere to be seen on Arliss. Reyes is right then. The weather is of magical nature, Jenny commented. I'm afraid it seems that way, Mangloss agreed. Whatever the elves have been doing on the island for these last 4 months, they haven't been impeded by the weather. 100,000 elves and 70 harpy villages, the king repeated. At least, Mangloss commented. About 200 huntresses per village, Reyes decided to offer. My one village wouldn't stand a chance against them, and I won't throw my girls' lives away. So, the king asked, are you now doubting the wisdom of attacking Arliss? I don't know, Reyes replied uncertainly. What other choices do we have? Well, the king stepped out into the middle of the room and said, what are the odds? How many soldiers will we have fit for combat inside of a week? It was Sir Grant's turn to speak. Currently our forces consist of 350 knights. That's all the knights of the Moth and Ganespa counted together. Excepting myself, Reyes, the 2 dukes, and of course your majesty. We also have 1,900 and... Round to the nearest 100, would you? The king interrupted. Yes, my liege, Sir Grant replied. We have approximately 2,000 survivors from Castle de Moth, of whom approximately half know how to use a bow. We have close to 3,000 soldiers who are part of the militia of Lamington, all of whom could handle a bow, and we have approximately 1,800 soldiers from Castle Ganespa, about 700 of whom can use a bow. Finally, we have close to 10,000 trained peasants. I haven't got an exact count, but none of them are very good with a bow. Why all this emphasis on who can use a bow? Manipul asked. Harpies fly, Greyforth explained. Most of the time the bow is the only defence against them, assuming they fly low enough for the archer to hit them, Reyes felt he should add. Right, the king said, referring to the numbers. Basically, if we go to Arliss, we'd be so greatly outnumbered that it could well be a slaughter. Anida and I can fight, Jenny commented. 2 more will hardly make a lot of difference to the outcome, my sweet, the king told her. Besides, I don't want any harm to befall you, and I wish no harm to befall you, my love. That doesn't mean I'll stop you going to war. Horse and tiger, if we don't defeat the elves, our people are going to be subjugated to a life of slavery. Would you rather your wife die on the field of battle defending what she believed in, or would you rather she died a slave to an elf, possibly living out her last few years as concubine to a fat smelly elven nobleman? You don't play fair, my love, the king told her. Very well, you may fight with us, but please, stay at the back of the army when you can, and don't put yourself in harm's way more than you have to. I won't try to leave the army, my love, Jenny assured him. Anida is the best sword among us, Sir Grant commented. I'll tell her she can fight. I never said, the king started. I just assumed the queen is going to fight. She would like Anida beside her as a bodyguard, Sir Grant commented. Anida is my best friend, Jenny clarified. Fine, fine, the king agreed. Let's get on with the meeting. We need to decide if Arliss is truly our only real option, or if there might be some other target we could aim for. Mangloss, Reyes said, taking a few steps towards the mage. How many humans are currently on Arliss? I truly don't know, Mangloss replied. Any humans on the island are shrouded by the same anti-scry barrier that is preventing me from getting an accurate estimate of the elven numbers. However, judging from the fact that they emptied the cities of First Town and Lufton, and maybe a few others as well, and transported virtually their entire population to the island, and assuming that the island wasn't just being used as a stop-off point before the prisoners were transported to Cassitella or Dubra to be sold as slaves, then the number could be anywhere between 2 and 3 million. If we could free all those people, think of the army we would have to win the country back, Reyes frothed. What is more, there was something like 3 miles of sea between the island and the mainland. That's quite a sizable moat. It means nothing to harpies, Jenny pointed out. Mangloss shook his head sadly. Those humans are slaves. After 4 months you can guarantee they would have been fed enchanted food by now to keep them under control. Maybe in time I will be able to find a cure for the enchantment, but Princess Alice is yet to respond favourably to anything I've tried. I still think Arliss is our best bet, Reyes commented uncertainly. Perhaps we should look at our other options, the king suggested. Do we even have any other options? Mangloss turned to face the blank wall that was located just behind the refreshment table and cast a spell. An image appeared on the wall. It was a large map and it took up the entire height of the wall, with Ganespa and Demoth sitting together side by side near the ceiling, while the island chain of Arliss all but lay flat against the floor. It was magic in one other way. The observer could look deep into the map, burrowing through layer after layer of detail, until it was possible to make out the smallest building in the tiniest village, all without interfering with what anyone else was seeing. "This is the kingdom of Florif," Mangler said needlessly. He flicked his wrist and a large number of green specks appeared all down the western side of the map, with just a few scattered about the east. The green represents the goblins. Each speck represents a different being. Manglos flicked his wrist again, and this time a large number of red specks appeared on the eastern side. They were scattered in much the same way as the goblins had, but with one key difference. Red is for the elves. The lighter specks are elven colonists. They've already arrived and started to claim our houses as their own. They're working on a first-come, first-served basis, with the best homes going to the officers of the army and the colonists who settle the quickest. "Very interesting," the king said, "but what does—" "I am not finished, my liege," Manglos explained. He made another flick of his wrist, and this time black specks appeared, scattered randomly all over the map in small clusters. "Harpies. Notice how heavy a concentration there seems to be on the island of Arliss. Looks as if nearly half the harpy villages involved in this invasion have settled there," the king commented. "And that's just what we can see," Manglos replied. He flicked his wrist once more, and this time blue specks appeared all over the map. Only a few scattered here and there, usually near the towns. These are humans. For the most part they are aged and infirm. Anyone aged 60 or younger has either been shipped to Arliss or has been transported to Elistran and the rest of the Empire. I think we'll find that the children were of no value on Arliss, and so they have all been sent north. Can you show us on this map if anyone younger than 60 is still in the country?" the king asked. Manglos waved a hand and the map changed just slightly. Some of the blue flecks became orange. "Slaves," Manglos explained. "Brought back from the Elven Empire to assist in taming the new land. They won't make much of an army either." The king examined the map for a good few minutes, looking for anything that might give them an advantage in the coming battle. There was a moment when he thought he had seen something. There was a fair-sized cluster of orange specks just outside the city of Lufton. They were mingled with blue specks, but there were very few red specks among them. "What about these?" "Slaves," Manglos announced. "They're all slaves." "But I see so little red," the king pointed out. "When a slave has been fed enchanted food, they don't need to be supervised," Manglos explained. Reyes said something about the Lufton militia creating a kind of underground movement to fight the elven invaders, Jenny offered. "Perhaps," Manglos agreed, "but after 4 months I doubt they still resist. The elves have probably dealt with them a long time ago." "I can see nothing then," the king said. "I can see no other option at all." "We could just stay here," Manipul suggested. "And leave the rest of the land to the mercy of the elves?" the king asked. He shook his head. "We can't do that. The elves know where we are. Sooner or later their mages might find a way through the barrier." "Possibly," Manipul commented, "but doubtful. If they haven't gotten into the encampment in 4 months, I don't think they'll ever get in." "Let's assume you're right," the king said. "How much food do we have in the encampment?" "Not a great deal," Manglos replied. 6 more months, maybe 7 at most. We could stretch it a little further by introducing rationing and eating the horses. If the snow were to let up, we might be able to plant some crops, but we could never plant enough to feed everyone. Since the weather seems to be magical in nature, though, that seems unlikely. "It's been hard enough finding foraging for the animals we do have," Sir Grant commented. "We might have 6 months of food, but I doubt the animals have as much as a month left." "Things are that bad?" the king asked. "We're only as well off as we are because some of the peasants had the foresight to bring food for the animals with them," Sir Grant explained. "We don't have enough salt to slaughter everything and preserve it." "What if we launched an attack against the pointers surrounding us?" Grateful asked. "And then what?" the king replied. "Assuming we won, and assuming the elves didn't just send more soldiers to replace them, we would still starve here." "It would enable our hunters to hunt again," Grateful said, though his heart wasn't in it. "We would lose a lot of soldiers and gain little," the king replied. "No, I'm afraid our first choice still seems to be the only choice. It might not save the country, but an attack on Arliss might damage the plans of whoever is behind this invasion." "It's not much of a choice," Manipul commented. "It's not," the king agreed. "If I'm honest though, I'd rather charge into battle well fed and on the back of my horse than have to eat my horse and then charge out anyway on foot and half starved." Standing beside him, Queen Jenny nodded her agreement vehemently. "Arliss it is then," Grateful stepped forward, proclaiming, "to death and glory." "No," the king insisted. "We go to Arliss to win. To glory, yes. Death, maybe. We might be greatly outnumbered, but any one of our knights can handle at least 10 of the elven soldiers." We have the best trained soldiers in the world. I am confident we can win this. When you address your men about this, feel free to tell them we are going to Arliss. Feel free to tell them that a hard and bloody battle lies ahead of us. I don't want to hear anyone claiming that we are going there to make a glorious last stand, or any kind of defeatist talk. At the end of this week, Arliss will be ours again, and we will consider our next move. Reyes, Jenny said, she kept her voice soft and gentle, it will be up to you to find us a nice piece of land on Arliss where we can assemble our forces before the elves even realise we're there and can react. The more time we have to prepare, the better our chances. I understand, Reyes replied. I hope such a piece of land exists. If it doesn't, Greyfall suggested, then you might have to clear it. Reyes glanced quickly over his brother and nodded. He had maybe 140 huntresses, once he'd finally seen how much damage his takeover of the village had caused. Those who were too young to fight he wanted kept safe and sound in the painting with the rest of the non-combatants. 140. It wasn't a huge number, but they were harpies. 2 days then, the king addressed them. Just one thing, Manglos commented. Due to the way magic works, people and livestock will not be moved automatically into the painting. When the spell is complete, everyone will be standing around in what will amount to empty fields until we can move them into the painting. It might be nice if people were warned before the final spell gets cast. The castle, Reyes asked, will be gone, so make sure you aren't on one of the higher floors, Manglos suggested. Only the painting will remain outside of itself. Even the easels on when it rests will vanish. Fortunately, the spell will be finished by then and it won't harm the result. You should also make sure that anything you're likely to want to use outside of the painting is on your person when the spell is cast. Otherwise it will become part of the painting. Right, the king said. Assuming we have time before the battle, our next war council will be held on the island of Arliss itself. There, when we've had a chance to look at the enemy, we shall decide upon the best tactics to use against them.